The story of the Founding Fathers and the U.S. Constitution is one of revolution, philosophy, and the building of a new nation based on unprecedented ideals. In the late 18th century, the American colonies were on the brink of significant change. After years of escalating tensions between the British Crown and its colonies, the desire for self-governance, representation, and independence culminated in the Revolutionary War. But what followed that victory in 1783 was perhaps the most challenging task: crafting a system of government that would unify the 13 disparate colonies while ensuring liberty, equality, and justice for all. The Founding Fathers were the architects of this vision. This group, though diverse in background, region, and political beliefs, shared a common goal: to establish a nation that would embody the Enlightenment ideals of individual liberty and self-governance. They were men of intellect, many of whom were well versed in the political philosophies of thinkers like John Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau, who had challenged monarchic rule and advocated for the separation of powers and the protection of natural rights. At the forefront of this movement were leaders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. Each played a critical role in shaping the early republic. George Washington, for example, was not only the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army but also a unifying figure who later became the nation's first president. Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, articulated the colony's desire for freedom with the famous words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Benjamin Franklin, a diplomat and intellectual, helped secure France's crucial support during the Revolutionary War. Once independence was achieved, however, the colonies faced the immense challenge of establishing a functioning government. The Articles of Confederation, adopted during the war, proved insufficient for governing the young nation. It gave too much power to the states and left the central government weak, unable to levy taxes or regulate commerce effectively. The nation was on the verge of economic collapse, and conflicts between states made clear the need for a stronger federal structure. In 1787, a constitutional convention was convened in Philadelphia, where 55 delegates from the states met to draft a new framework for the government. This gathering would mark the birth of the U.S. Constitution. James Madison, often called the "father of the Constitution," played a pivotal role in shaping the document. Madison believed that the new nation needed a government capable of addressing the collective needs of the states while protecting individual freedoms. His study of ancient democracies and his desire to avoid tyranny deeply influenced his contributions to the Constitution. The Constitutional Convention was not without its conflicts. One of the most contentious issues was how representation in the new government would be determined. Larger states favored the Virginia Plan, which proposed representation based on population, while smaller states supported the New Jersey Plan, which called for equal representation for each state. The result was the Great Compromise, a bicameral legislature with a House of Representatives based on population and a Senate with equal representation from each state. This compromise allowed for a balance of power that satisfied both large and small states. Another critical debate was over the issue of slavery. Southern states, whose economies were heavily reliant on enslaved labor, wanted to ensure that their slaves would be counted for purposes of representation. Northern states opposed this, leading to the infamous 3/5 compromise, which determined that each enslaved person would be counted as 3/5 of a person for both representation and taxation purposes. While this compromise allowed the Constitution to move forward, it set the stage for future conflicts that would eventually lead to the Civil War. The Constitution established a system of checks and balances, dividing power among three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. This separation of powers was designed to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. The executive branch, led by the president, would enforce laws. The legislative branch, composed of Congress, would make laws, and the judicial branch, led by the Supreme Court, would interpret laws. Additionally, the system of federalism divided powers between the national government and the states, ensuring that governance remained close to the people. To gain support for the Constitution, a series of essays known as the Federalist Papers were written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. These essays outlined the reasons for the new Constitution and explained how it would function. One of the key arguments was that the Constitution would create a stronger, more effective government while still safeguarding individual liberties. However, not everyone was convinced. Many feared that the new constitution gave too much power to the federal government and did not do enough to protect individual rights. This led to the addition of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which were ratified in 1791. The Bill of Rights guarantees fundamental liberties such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press, the right to bear arms, protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, and the right to a fair trial. It also protects states' rights and limits the powers of the federal government, addressing the concerns of those who had initially opposed the Constitution. The ratification of the Constitution marked the beginning of a new era in American history. It provided a framework for governance that has endured for over 2 centuries. However, the Constitution was never meant to be a static document. The Founding Fathers included provisions for amendments, understanding that the needs of the nation would change over time. Since its ratification, the Constitution has been amended 27 times, addressing issues such as the abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, and changes to presidential term limits. While the Founding Fathers' vision was revolutionary, it was not without its flaws. The original Constitution tolerated slavery, denied women the right to vote, and excluded many from its promises of liberty and justice. Over time, the nation has worked to live up to the ideals set forth in the Constitution, striving to expand the definition of "we the people" to include all Americans. Today, the U.S. Constitution remains a symbol of the nation's commitment to democracy and the rule of law. It continues to guide the functioning of the government and protect the rights of its citizens. The story of the Founding Fathers and the U.S. Constitution is one of compromise, debate, and the pursuit of an ideal government that balances power and liberty. While imperfect, the Constitution laid the groundwork for the United States to grow into the powerful and diverse democracy it is today, serving as a model for other nations seeking to establish their own forms of government. In the end, the legacy of the Founding Fathers is not just the independence they secured, but the enduring principles of governance they set in motion. Their debates and decisions continue to influence American politics, and their creation, the Constitution, remains a living document, adapting and evolving as the nation it governs continues to grow and change. This tale of revolution, constitution, and the birth of a nation is not just the story of America's past, it is the foundation of its future.